Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrien Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this video here about weather risk across the United States and across Missouri. We're going to start off by taking a look here at some of the extreme weather that we had across Missouri throughout this growing season, and then we'll transition at the end of this video into a forecast for fall and early winter, and also talk about some issues going on in South America. A number to take away with you, though, is the number 124 right here. When we look back over the last 12 months, so September of 18 through August of 19. That particular time period is the wettest such time period on record for the United States. We have about 124 years worth of data, and we know that Missouri was at the epicenter of some of this incredibly heavy rainfall. So let's dig on into this and see what got us there. One of the dominant factors was the position and strength of the jet stream throughout much of spring. It dipped into a trough over the southwest and then built into a huge ridge over the northeast. And when that happens, well, it kind of does what you see here to this firefighter when he opens the high pressure side of that valve. This just unlocks the Gulf of Mexico to send a bunch of moisture into the central United States, and the upper level support inside that box where I do that circle is perfect for the development of a large low pressure systems like this one. You're actually watching here on satellite a $2 billion weather disaster. March 12th and 13th of earlier this spring, this large 1,500 mile wide low pressure system just destroyed so much in the middle part of the country with strong winds, a blizzard, severe weather, and a lot of flooding that hammered Missouri. And this was the beginning of our very, very wet spring that we had this year. Just to show you how wet it is, this animation is going to show you every day from April 1st all the way until mid-September what rainfall looked like every day. And when you watch this, you try to find the planting window that was supposed to open up in April, May, and even early June across parts of the Midwest. And what do we see? Just repeated rounds of showers and thunderstorms moving across the United States. And this is going to go down as one of the wettest years on record. It certainly impacted our planting of corn and soybeans. To show you corn here, that black line you just saw going across the screen, well, that is the slowest planting progress we've had in over 40 years for the planting of corn. It is the new record setter and the one that we'll be paying most attention to in coming years when forecasting the planting of a crop. But it all comes down to precipitation. Now take a look at this. From April 15th through June 30th, that's the time period, the jet stream did this a lot, where it dipped down here over the western United States, gave us great upper level support in the midsection of the country for lots of low pressure systems. Parts of Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, we saw surpluses of rain that were anywhere between 7 and, in some locations, over 20 inches of excess rainfall. Well, that pattern broke down in the middle of summer, right around the 4th of July, where El Nino collapsed, a ridge built into the flow of the jet stream out here over the western United States. And that took our trajectory of our storms to becoming more from the northwest. But they still cut across Missouri, specifically western Missouri and eastern Kansas. While parts of Iowa and Illinois, even parts of Michigan and the Mid-South were drying out, the rain just did not stop on this flow pattern here with northwest flow in the jet stream. And the end result was just incredibly wet weather tucked away here, while drought settled in Texas, drought settled into parts of the Corn Belt here, and patchy drought was setting up over here in parts of the southeast. So really it was just this corridor right in through here that continued to get the rainfall. Now, because of that flip-flopping pattern here and heavy, heavy rain to drier conditions, we know that across the United States, nearly 20 million acres went in to prevent plant. These data here are shown to you by the American Farm Bureau. It's incredible to see that large of a number, but when you saw how much rain we got, it makes a lot of sense. Add to that the severe weather. Well, we've already surpassed our annual total for severe storms. It's the third most active year on record. 1,500 reports of tornadoes, and we're going to talk about some nasty ones that went through parts of Missouri. 15,000 reports of strong to severe winds, and over 5,000 reports of large hail. In Missouri, you have seen it all this year. When I think about this, I'm taken back to this particular date. This was May 22nd, 2019. What we're watching here in this animation are some powerful storms that erupted in parts of Kansas and Oklahoma and then eventually pushed into southwestern Missouri. As they did so, we saw this supercell. And whenever you see this storm structure on radar, just remember this feature right in through here. That is a hook echo. And inside that hook echo, we produced EF3 strength winds, very powerful 160 mile an hour winds, causing a lot of damage with this very wide tornado that went through southwestern Missouri. We also got this out of Jefferson, Missouri. You can only see it lit up here by lightning at night, another massive wedge on an evening that produced, well, when it was all said and done, we had actually 50 tornadoes that stretched in through this area by the time we got into early morning on the 23rd. Very, very active night for severe weather. It also dumped an enormous amount of rainfall. Over that 3-day time period, parts of southwestern Missouri saw 6 to 9 inches of rain. So we put that all together, looking just at the last couple of months here. August of 2019, well, the state of Missouri ranks 118th out of 125 in terms of being the wettest years on record. And look over there at Kansas, 125. And even in the last 30 days leading up to mid-September, we can still see how wet things have been across the state of Missouri. Now, I get asked great questions about this, and I'm going to give you a little bit of longer-term statistics before we turn our attention to a long-range forecast. April through October, look at some of these statistics here. Over the last 70 years, we have actually added, look at the blue line, an additional 1.5 inches of rainfall to our growing season. And so big rainfall events like this are happening more frequently. Over the last 14 days, so just looking now at September, the northern half of the state was quite wet while the southern half of the state was quite dry. But we did have, I should say, a tropical system that came out of the Gulf of Mexico, worked its way through Texas, and then added a lot of rainfall into Missouri here. And it's that time of the year where we have to be watching not only the jet stream, but the tropics as well. So let's get into a longer range forecast and see what we've got in store for the month of October. In general, showing you here the best global model we have, the ECMWF, we see that October temperatures are expected to stay near average in the central states, at times maybe even having some cooler than average weather. But overall, this is a much different flow pattern than we had a year ago, and that may be featuring more ridging out west than it did a year ago, where we saw troughing in the southwest leading to an active pattern over Missouri. What is the result? Well, even though September is coming in a little wet, we do see that this region is forecast by the longer range models to show a slight dry bias. Now, this would be perfectly ideal for us to get this crop out of the ground across the state of Missouri, given how wet things have been this year. But I'll tell you something, this forecast model is quite fragile, and what I mean by that is when we look out this far, small fluctuations can often cause big changes. So this is some preliminary ideas that we have for October. What are some of the dominant forces moving forward? Well, this region right in through here, compared to the region in the North Pacific, we have two different configurations. We have cooler water tucked away in what we call our El Nino region, but warmer water to the north in what we call the Pacific Decadal Oscillation region. These two things often work together. Normally when it's warm in the North Pacific, it's warm over the El Nino region. But we're out of phase this year, as you can see, between the two, making longer-term predictability quite tough. Now, where's El Nino going? Well, if we look at this graph over here on the left, if we were to keep these lines above the dash line, that indicates strong El Nino in the forecast. Get it below the dash line, we're talking about La Nina. While the forecast spread is large, we can see that when we average it, we tend to stay between the dash lines, which means INSO-neutral conditions. So for our November through January time period, historically, we would see a jet stream that's doing something a bit more like this. That would keep Missouri on the cooler side to start our winter and also on the drier side. But I don't think that this is the dominant factor moving forward. In fact, I think more of the warm water in the North Pacific is going to dominate things, and therefore I'm tending to trust the longer range European model more. So I have November precipitation on the left, upper left, November temperatures on the bottom left. And this is suggesting the jet stream's going to be doing something a bit more like this. You can see the cooler weather tucked away in here, well, at least compared to the rest of the country. Tell me the jet stream's going to race in this direction. That brings in Gulf moisture and could potentially keep us wet through November as well. And that pattern really gets established here once we get into the month of December. You can see the longer range European model want to keep this area cold in through here. Active storm track right through the middle section of the country, hence the wetter than average conditions. So you can see there's some major competition between our analog forecast, which you saw a moment ago, and our forecast here. So given the uncertainty, I'll just tell you this. What I want you to be on the lookout for is this particular forecast track. This could be the one that would be most impactful. But remember, we could have these subseasonal events taking place which could ultimately throw this whole pattern off. And that's why long-range weather forecasting is speculative by nature. But we do need to be on the lookout for cold snaps that come from disruptions in the polar vortex, negative North Atlantic oscillation, and negative Arctic oscillation. In the MJO, that's going to be the feature that's going to control where that storm track is going to be. Now, I'll keep you updated on this all winter long, and I'll show you where to go to get those forecasts in a moment here. But this is some preliminary ideas that I have for winter so far. Quickly to finish this up, I'm going to talk about South America and the planting of their soybean crop. Just something to remember. Over the last decade, South America has on average added between 1.5 and 2.5 million acres of soybeans. Therefore, their production curve is exponential. They're very dry right now. You've probably seen some of the news footage talking about the dry conditions in Brazil's main growing regions. Well, it is showing up on satellite in multiple ways here. So the deficit they have in rainfall going into their growing season is going to be problematic because we're forecasting it to continue throughout much of November through January. That's what this particular map is telling us here. Less thunderstorm activity. Now that's substantial because through September, October, November, we're expecting it to stay above average temperatures, even through December, January, and February above average temperatures, which increases evapotranspiration and tends to keep them dry. And if it does stay dry during the next several months, which you can see October and November here, and this is December and January, that slows down the planting of their crop, the first crop soybeans, and could potentially impact safrinha crop as well. So Brazil needs to be watched very, very carefully. Now, to wrap up this forecast video, what I want to make sure that you know about is where to go to get my forecasts. Go to my.nutrienagsolutions.com to get the latest. It's right here. Get on there, sign up, and get Weather Story completely for free 5 days a week. It's an excellent resource. I want you to check it out. But with that, I'll wrap this forecast video up right here. We thank you for your attention. Have a great harvest, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.